we read good. Those 3 words right there, that's where this story ends. A file saved on a man's computer in his home in Tangier, 6 months after everything was supposedly over, 6 months after the sheikh came and the rites were done and the entity was, quote, expelled. The file was opened at 3:03 in the morning. Nobody in the house was awake. And at the bottom of the last page below his final sentence, someone had added 3 words in a handwriting that was not his. We read good. Now, before I tell you how we got there, I need to tell you about the night Yusuf first heard his own voice coming from an empty room, because that is where this really begins. Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, first of all, welcome. And second of all, you picked quite a story to start with. This one is going to stay with you. I promise you that. For those of you who have been here a while, you know, I don't say that lightly. I've told a lot of stories on this channel, dark stories, strange stories, stories that made me check my own corners before I went to sleep. But this one is different. This one comes from the Rif Mountains of Morocco, from a village so small it barely exists on any map, from a house built by a grandfather who knew something was wrong with the land he was building on and built anyway, and from a man named Yusuf who drove up there one October evening to check on his elderly aunt and came back a completely different person. I'm going to tell you the full story today, start to finish, every detail, every moment, every knock on the wall, every whisper through the stone. And yes, I'm going to tell you about those 3 words at the end. We read good. So get comfortable, turn the lights down if you want. I personally recommend it, and let's go. So Yusuf, 38 years old, civil engineer, lives in Tangier with his wife Emma and their 6-year-old daughter Sarah. By all accounts, a completely rational man, a man who documents everything, a man who trusts measurements and data and things he can put in a report with a timestamp on it. He is exactly the kind of person you would not expect this to happen to, which is, and I say this with complete sincerity, exactly why it happened to him. It started with a WhatsApp message. His aunt Fatima, his father's sister, a widow in her early 60s, living alone in the family's ancestral stone house deep in the Rif Mountains, sent him a single photo, a photo of a wall, an ordinary stone wall, nothing special about it. And under the photo, she wrote 7 words, Yusuf, there is something in the house. He called her immediately, no answer. He called again, nothing. He called a 3rd time, silence. He tried her neighbor, an elderly woman named Lara, and when she picked up, her voice was choppy, like she was speaking from underwater. And she said this, come son, come quickly. Fatima is not herself. He asked, is she sick? Did she fall? And Lara said, I don't know how to explain it. Just come, and come before anyone else calls you and frightens you. Come and see with your own eyes. Now, I want you to think about that last part for a second. Come before anyone else frightens you. That's not what you say when someone has a medical issue. That's not what you say when someone fell and broke something. That's what you say when the thing that is happening defies the categories you have for explaining things. Yusuf packed his bag and left the next morning. The drive to Ain Ramada is 44 kilometers. The first half is normal paved road. The second half is a narrow dirt track cutting through a dense pine forest. And here's the first weird thing, and guys, this is just the first thing on a very long list. When Yusuf pulled over on the edge of the village to check Google Maps, the dirt track didn't exist on the map, not marked with no name, not shown as an unknown road, just not there. The map showed nothing but continuous forest, no roads, as if the path he had just driven did not exist. He ignored it, drove on memory, arrived at the house just as the sunset prayer call was echoing from the village mosque, and the first thing he noticed was that the front door was open. Not wide open, not slammed shut, open by exactly enough for a person to slip through without touching it. He went inside, found Fatima sitting on the sofa with her back to him, called her name. She didn't move, called again, nothing. 3rd time, she turned, and here's the thing, it was Fatima, her face, her hair, her clothes, everything about her checked out, everything about her was her, except the look in her eyes. The look in her eyes was like someone looking through her, like someone very far away was using her eyes as windows to peer at him from somewhere else entirely. She said in a voice hoarse and dry, like someone who hadn't drunk water, in days, you've come at last. Yusuf said, yes, he was here. Why hadn't she answered his calls? And she said, we've been waiting for you. He looked around the room. There was no one else there. He asked, who is we? She turned back toward the wall, stared at a specific spot on the wall, like she was looking at someone standing there, and then said, in a tone like someone speaking in their sleep, nothing, Yusuf, I'm tired. And she walked to her room, closed the door, and on the floor near the wall she'd been staring at, Yusuf noticed a moisture stain, shaped like a rectangle, dry at the edges, still damp in the center, like something wet had been standing there recently. Okay, so Yusuf is an engineer, right? He doesn't just accept things at face value. His brain immediately starts building a list of rational explanations. The hoarse voice, she's been sick. The weird look, she's exhausted and alone and clearly struggling. The we comment, she was half asleep and confused. The moisture on the floor, old house, stone walls, humidity, simple. He goes to bed telling himself this, and then at 3:15 in the morning, he hears the first sound. One knock. Not on the door, on the wall between his room and the locked western storage room. One single knock, precise, deliberate, and then silence. He doesn't sleep after that. The next day, he starts inspecting the house like the engineer he is, opening doors, checking corners, taking notes in his little notebook, and he finds three things that he cannot explain away. Number one, the windows in his bedroom. His bedroom have a dark, sticky substance smeared on their inner edges. He touches it, it's warm, much warmer than the surrounding stone. Like something alive had been pressed against it from the inside. Number two, behind the door of that same bedroom, there are scratch marks on the stone wall, deep marks, many of them like something with very large claws had scratched the wall over and over. Number three, the western room at the end of the hallway is padlocked with a lock he has never seen before, a heavy rusted iron padlock. Nobody knows where the key is, and when he asks Fatima about it, she says, and this is a direct quote, "The room has nothing in it, it's not your concern." It's not your concern, right? That night, Yusuf does something smart. He puts his phone on the bedside table, opens the voice recorder app, leaves it running and tries to sleep. At 2:32 in the morning, he wakes up to a sound coming from Fatima's room, breathing. But not normal breathing, not sleep breathing. This was deliberate, slow, deep, rhythmically precise, like someone who is fully awake and choosing each breath on purpose, like the breathing of worship. And then it stops. And then he hears something that he says froze the blood in his veins. Footsteps on the ceiling, heavy, slow, perfectly regular, like a person walking back and forth. Remember, this is a single-story house. There's no upstairs. He counts them 8 steps to the right, stop. 8 steps to the left, stop. Back and forth, back and forth. For 2 hours straight, not changing rhythm, not speeding up, not slowing down, like a machine, like something that does not get tired. And at 4 in the morning, the footsteps stop. He hears a sound from the hallway, opens his door. Fatima is standing in the middle of the corridor in complete darkness, eyes wide open, looking up at the ceiling, not moving, not responding to her name. He calls her, nothing. He calls again. And slowly, unnaturally slowly, like she's moving through something thicker than air, she turns toward him and she smiles. Now listen, it was her smile, same face, same woman, but the smile was just slightly wider than it should have been by just a few millimeters, and those extra millimeters made it look like something wearing her face, rather than being her face. She said, "Sleep, Yusuf, the night is long," and went back to her room. In the morning, Yusuf listens to the recording, and in the 18th minute, in the window between when Fatima's breathing stopped and when the footsteps started, the microphone had caught something breathing right next to his head. Slow, calm, inhuman in its rhythm, a few inches from the microphone, from the pillow where his head had been. The room had been locked from the inside. He'd been alone in it. He went and sat in the courtyard outside, looking at the quiet sleeping village, the smoke from chimneys, a rooster somewhere in the distance. And inside him, he told me, was a quiet certainty that settled like cold water. The certainty that whatever was happening here had no explanation in any framework he had ever used to understand the world. And that certainty was more terrifying than anything he had heard. Okay, so we're on day 3. Day 3 is when Yusuf starts hearing his own voice, not like thinking his own thoughts, not reading something in his own mental voice, actually hearing his voice, his exact tone, his exact pitch, the specific way Yusuf al-Mazari has always sounded when he speaks. Coming from empty rooms, first time 11:30 in the morning, he's in the kitchen peeling potatoes. From the hallway, clear as anything, he hears his own voice say, "Fatima, I'm here." He drops the knife, rushes to the hallway, nobody there. He checks Fatima's room. She's on her prayer mat, she didn't call out. Second time that afternoon, he's sitting in the courtyard reading from inside the house from the direction of the main room. His voice says one word, "Come." He goes inside, nothing. Nothing is there, only him standing. Third time is the one that broke him. It's around midnight, he's lying in bed trying to sleep. Room is dark. He's on his back, staring at the ceiling like people do when sleep won't come. And from under the bed, his voice calm and clear as a normal conversation says, "Turn off the light, Yusuf." The light was already off. He jumps out of bed, grabs his phone, shines the flashlight under the bed, dust, an old wooden box that used to belong to his father, nothing else. He sits on the edge of the bed for the rest of the night, not sleeping, not moving, just sitting there with the flashlight on, staring at the darkness. And this is the point, he told me, where he stopped trying to explain things rationally, because there are situations where the rational explanations run out, and this was one of them. He calls his wife Emma the next day. He doesn't tell her everything. He keeps it general, but she notices something in his voice and she says, "Your voice sounds strange, Yusuf." He says, "I'm just tired." She says, "No, strange like your voice, but heavier, like there's something extra in it." He asks about their daughter Lamia, 6 years old, back home in Tangier. Emma says she drew something for you yesterday, and she sends him a picture, a drawing, a child's drawing, a house with black walls and 2 small windows, a man standing in front, and beside the man a shadow much larger than him. He asks, what did Lamia say the shadow was? Emma pauses, then says she said it was her grandfather's friend, his 6-year-old daughter in Tangier, who had never been to that house, had drawn the house and the man and the shadow guys. That detail, that is the detail that when I read it made me put the document down for a second and just breathe. On the 4th night, the nightmare begins. Now look, I want to be precise about what kind of nightmare this was, because it was not the normal kind, not the chaotic, jumbled mess of images that regular dreams are made of. This was structured, deliberate, conscious. He knew he was asleep. He knew this was a dream and he could not wake up. The place in the dream was always the same, a narrow room with walls of dark, damp black stone, ceiling so low he could almost touch it with his hands. No furniture, no door, no windows except one, a rectangular hole in the wall looking out onto absolute blackness. And the light in the room was a pale, sickly green, like stagnant water, like algae. He always started on the far side of the room. And he always walked toward the window. Even though in the dream he knew he shouldn't, even though he was completely aware that the window was dangerous, his feet just walked like something was pulling him by a thread attached to his chest. On the first night, he reached the window and looked out, and from the darkness outside, something came toward him, a face, a human face, but inverted. The skin split down the middle and folded outward, exposing what was underneath dark red flesh. Blue veins in a precise, terrible pattern, like an anatomy diagram that was still alive, but the eyes were in their correct position, white and clear, in the middle of all that exposed flesh, and they were looking at him, not with anger, not with hunger, with calm recognition, the look of someone who has known you for a very long time and is pleased to see you. The face moved its mouth, it spoke, but Yusuf could never remember the words when he woke up. He could only remember the feeling it left, the feeling of someone reminding you of something you already know but forgot a long time ago. Every night, the nightmare repeated, and every night he reached the window a little faster. By the 4th night, he was starting the dream already at the window's edge. And then on the 5th night, for the first time, he woke up remembering what the face had said. It had said, "You know where the key is?"